My name is Ksenia, I'm 33. And that evening I discovered that the company I had built for 3 years didn't legally include me at all. If you've ever faced something like this, comment where you're reading from. The cafe smelled of burnt espresso and damp wool coats. Outside, it was just after 7:15 p.m. And the February rain was still dripping from umbrellas leaning against chairs. I had my laptop open, my hands slightly sticky from the sugar packet I had torn too fast. I was scrolling through a PDF of incorporation documents our lawyer had sent, for transparency. Page 7 shareholders. 2 names. Not mine. My breath caught, the kind of pause where the sound of the fridge humming behind the counter suddenly gets louder than anything else. I whispered to myself, half laughing. No, maybe it's a draft. My index finger pressed into the corner of the page on the screen, as if I could smudge it back into reality. It wasn't a draft. It was dated, notarized, and filed on the 18th of November. I had spent that exact weekend in the office pulling an all-nighter on the product demo, eating instant noodles at 2 a.m. under fluorescent lights. My handwriting was still on the whiteboard in the photos we had sent to our investor. But in the only document that mattered, I simply did not exist. I glanced at the ceramic sugar bowl on the table, one cube chipped at the edge, and realized my hand was trembling. This wasn't just a mistake. It was deliberate. I didn't know yet that in 11 days I would be the one standing in front of our investor, holding a printed chat thread that would change everything. The next morning I sat in our office kitchen, staring at the water stains on the ceiling tile above the fridge. The room always smelled faintly of instant coffee and overheated plastic from the microwave. At 9:42 a.m. he walked in, the so-called partner. He tossed his leather backpack on the counter like it belonged to him more than the company itself. Investor call at 11. Don't overdo the slides, he said without looking at me. I closed the lid of my laptop slowly, letting the click echo in the cramped space. I saw the incorporation papers last night, I said. My voice was even. He poured water into a chipped mug, steam rising as he stirred instant coffee with a metal spoon. Yeah? They're just formalities. Formalities? I repeated, fingers still resting on the edge of my closed computer. It's November filing. 2 shareholders. My name isn't there. He didn't meet my eyes. Just shrugged, spoon clinking. Lawyers advise to keep it simple at the start. We'll figure it out later. The fluorescent light above us flickered twice. My chest tightened in rhythm with the buzz. 3 years of unpaid weekends debugging until 3 a.m. pitching side by side. And now I was later. I thought of the numbers I had entered myself. Revenue at 1.4 million rubles last quarter. Contracts I had personally drafted and signed on behalf of the team. My fingerprints were everywhere in the business, except the paper that defined it. I looked at his coffee mug. A faint lipstick mark from someone else on the rim. My stomach turned. I didn't push further that moment. Not in the kitchen. Not with the hum of the fridge and 2 interns just beyond the glass door. But something inside clicked. I won't do this anymore, I told myself silently, my thumbnail pressing a crescent into the palm of my hand. When I think back, the signs were there all along, small fractures in the surface I had chosen not to press too hard. 3 years earlier, in 2020, I had left a stable job in a marketing agency, 65,000 rubles monthly salary, predictable, dull. I believed in building something real. We sat in my 1-bedroom apartment then, knees knocking against the narrow IKEA table, sketching product flows on printer paper because we couldn't afford whiteboards. He had the swagger, I had the spreadsheets. First it felt like balance. He'd say, "You're the engine," while pouring me half of his energy drink at 1:30 a.m. I thought it meant respect. What it meant was, I could be counted on to do the heavy lifting while he played the face of the brand. By year 2, contracts started rolling in. I drafted them, carefully noting dates and percentages. I still remember one signed March 14, 2021, for 320,000 rubles monthly subscription revenue. He sent a 2-line email to the client. I stayed up 3 nights making sure the product didn't crash. I tolerated the imbalance because I thought ownership was understood, even if unspoken. My name was on pitch decks, my photo on team slides, my words in investor memos. What I didn't realize was that visibility and legality were 2 entirely separate worlds. He'd joke, "Paperwork is boring. You're good at boring stuff. I would laugh it off, pencil tucked behind my ear, sticky notes covering my desk like confetti. But when we landed our first 2 million ruble seed investment, he was the one who signed the bank forms. I was the one standing at the copy machine, collating the attachments. What was at stake now wasn't just money. It was recognition. My name missing from that November document meant I was legally nothing, just a shadow laborer who could be dismissed overnight, erased with a single email. And the worst part? I had no one to blame but myself for assuming trust equaled protection. The hum of that assumption was still in my ears when I closed my apartment door that night, leaned against the wood, and let the quiet press down. I thought of the chipped mug, the lipstick on the rim. I thought of my own name not existing on paper. I told myself, it's time to find proof. The proof arrived 2 days later, though not in the way I expected. It was a Friday evening, the office half dark, only the glow of monitors left behind. I was packing my bag when the intern stopped me at the door. He held out a sheet of paper, edges smudged with toner. Printer jammed again. This came out, don't know if it's important. I slid the page into my folder without thinking, but on the subway I pulled it out. A chat transcript. Printed. Between him and the lawyer. The ink was slightly blurred, like the cartridge had been running low. But the words were unmistakable. She's useful for now. Don't tell her about the cap table. Of course. She thinks we're co-founders. I felt the subway lurch, my shoulder hitting the metal pole. The page crackled in my grip. The date stamp at the top corner read, 03/11/2022, just 15 days before the incorporation filing. Exact alignment. They had planned this. They had decided in black and white that I was disposable. I folded the paper into thirds, pressing the crease with my nail until it almost tore. My reflection in the train window looked different, cheeks pale, eyes wide but steady. This wasn't just a slight. It was a theft. Of years of labor, of the version of myself who believed in loyalty. I tucked the folded sheet behind my Metro card in my wallet. My fingers brushed the embossed letters of my name on the bank card. That simple tactile fact I existed there, printed, undeniable, gave me a strange kind of strength. The train screeched to a halt. I stood, gripping the pole tighter than I needed to. In that moment I made the choice. I wouldn't confront him with words. Words he could bend, dismiss, laugh off. I would use paper. Their own language. The following Monday I booked a consultation with a lawyer recommended by a former client. The office was on the 5th floor of a Soviet-era building, linoleum floors scuffed from decades of shoes, air heavy with the smell of old paper and cigarette smoke clinging to the walls. I handed over the folded sheet, still with the creased lines, and the PDF of incorporation papers on a flash drive. The lawyer adjusted his thin glasses, eyes narrowing as he read. This isn't ambiguity, he said flatly. It's exclusion. Legally you hold 0%. They filed on November 18th, correct? Yes, I whispered. My palms were damp against my notebook. He tapped the transcript with his pen. And this, dated 03/11/2022, proves intent. You were never meant to be included. The radiator hissed beside us, a sharp burst of steam. I scribbled the words proves intent in the margin of my notebook, underlining twice. Your work? Any contracts signed by you personally? Plenty. At least 7 last year. One for 320,000 monthly, March 14th. He nodded. That matters. We'll need to gather originals. The next funding round is scheduled soon, isn't it? In 11 days, I said, my voice steadier now. Good. That's your leverage. Investors care about risk. A hidden co-founder is risk. The numbers crystallized in my head. 4 million rubles quarterly revenue. 2 million seed already raised, 11 days until the next check. My absence wasn't just a moral wound. It was a financial liability they had tried to bury. The lawyer leaned back, folding his hands. You have a choice. Stay quiet and hope for goodwill, or act before the investor signs. I wrote down the date of the funding meeting in the corner of the page. 22/02/2023. My handwriting was neat, deliberate. When I left, the chill outside bit my cheeks. I stood on the sidewalk, the traffic roar pressing in, the folder tight under my arm. No more hoping for goodwill. It was time to act. The lever was not loud. It was quiet, deliberate, paper against paper. On the morning of February 20th, 2 days before the investor meeting, I walked into the notary office with my folder. The air smelled faintly of varnish and winter coats drying on the rack. I laid down the incorporation PDF, my own signed contracts, and the printed chat. My voice didn't shake as I asked for certified copies. The clerk stamped each page. Heavy final thuds that sounded like a gavel. From there I went straight to my lawyer. He drafted a letter on official letterhead, bold black font, stamped and signed at the bottom. Notice of potential legal claim and injunction prepared. It included exhibit numbers. Exhibit A, Incorporation Filing 18/11/2022. Exhibit B, Contract signed by me 14/03/2021. Monthly 320,000 rubles. Exhibit C, Chat Transcript 03/11/2022. We printed 3 copies. One for the opposing side, one for the investor, one for me. At 4:35 p.m. I stood outside our office glass doors, letter in hand. I could hear laughter from inside, the clatter of keyboards. When he saw me, his smile faltered. "What's that?" he asked. I placed the envelope on the table between us. The air smelled of reheated soup from the intern's lunch, oddly domestic against the sharpness of the moment. "Official notice," I said simply. "I am a co-founder, and the investor will be informed before Wednesday." He didn't speak, just stared at the letter as though it might catch fire. My phone buzzed once in my coat pocket, confirmation from the courier that the investor's copy had been delivered. The silence stretched heavy. I picked up my notebook from the desk, slid my pen into the spiral, and closed the cover. For the first time in 3 years, I felt taller walking out of that office. Behind me, I heard the chair scrape violently against the floor. A sharp, involuntary sound. A shock breaking the surface. The consequences unfolded faster than I expected. By Thursday morning, the office was silent in a way I had never heard before. No music from the shared speaker. No chatter by the coffee machine. Just the hum of computers and the faint squeak of chair wheels. The investor arrived at 10:02 a.m. Sharp. A tall man in a navy coat, his assistant trailing with a laptop case. I sat across from him, folder neatly stacked in front of me. My partner tried to keep his usual confident posture, but his knee bounced under the table. The investor looked between us. "I've read the notice," he said plainly. His assistant tapped a pen against a pad, each click like a metronome. "Undisclosed co-founders equal undisclosed liabilities. That's unacceptable." My partner opened his mouth, but I cut in first. Every contract from March 2021 onward was negotiated, drafted, and signed by me. My work is in every deliverable. The exclusion wasn't oversight, it was intention. I slid forward Exhibit B, the 320,000 ruble contract with my signature. The paper was cool against my fingertips. The investor studied it, then set it down carefully. "I won't invest further until the structure is corrected," he said. His tone was final, like the closing of a door. The meeting ended in 21 minutes. That afternoon I packed my books from the office shelves into a cardboard box. 2 mugs, 1 plant with leaves curling brown at the tips, my notebooks with sticky notes still fluttering like small flags. I didn't linger. On my way out, the intern stopped me in the hall. One said softly, "We know it was you who kept the system running." I only nodded. Sometimes the smallest acknowledgments carry the most weight. At home, I placed the box on the floor of my living room. The smell of cardboard filled the air, mixed with the faint citrus from the candle I had lit the night before. I sat cross-legged on the rug, looked at my notebook stacked neatly, and allowed myself one long exhale. It wasn't victory. Not yet. But it was the first crack of light through the door. 2 days later, just when I thought the dust might settle, an email arrived. Subject line: Clarification for investor. It was from him. A 3-paragraph attempt to rewrite the story. He claimed I had been an external consultant, that my contracts were administrative support, and that my name had been mistakenly used in team materials. I read it twice, then once more, my jaw tightening. The timestamp was 9:47 a.m. On Sunday. He hadn't wasted a weekend. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a black USB drive, small and scuffed from being carried on my keychain for months. On it was a recording, a voice memo from our product launch last July. His voice laughing over champagne at 11:38 p.m., saying clearly, "We did it, co-founder. Couldn't have without you." I forwarded the audio file to the investor's assistant with a single line. Attached, confirmation of my role dated 22/07/2022. No drama, no embellishment. Just fact. Within an hour, I received a brief reply. Received. Understood. That was the seal. A witness in his own voice, undeniable. The gap between truth and spin finally closed. I leaned back on my sofa, the fabric scratchy against my neck, and let the quiet fill the room. Outside, someone's child was dragging a scooter across the pavement, the wheels clattering irregularly. Normal life sounds steadying me. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't waiting for the next blow. There was nothing left he could rewrite that would stand. Now my days are quieter, but they feel solid in a way they never did before. I wake up at 7:30, make coffee in the chipped white cup I brought home from the office, and open my laptop at the small wooden table by the window. The morning light spills across the notebook where I'm sketching my own roadmap, consulting projects first, then a small product of my own within 6 months. I've kept the certified folder of documents in a locked drawer. Not out of paranoia, but as a reminder, my name belongs on paper, and I will never again work where it doesn't. When he called last week, his voice strained, asking if I wanted to discuss terms. I listened in silence. Then I said, "We'll keep everything in writing." That was all. Calm, final. I've stopped explaining myself to people who don't want to see. I choose instead to show, through contracts signed properly, invoices paid directly to me, clients who address me without hesitation as founder. In the evenings, I walk through the courtyard near my building. The smell of grilled bread from the bakery downstairs drifts up, children kick balls against the wall, and I carry no folders, no weight on my shoulders. Just keys, a wallet, and my phone. For 3 years I gave away the quiet strength I'm now reclaiming. Piece by piece, line by line, I am building again. But this time on paper and in life, the name written is mine. And it stays there.